We all know that newsletters are incredibly painful to produce. You have to deal with broken templates, email clipping, Outlook formatting, or even just the tediousness of copy and pasting images, headlines, links from your site to your email service provider back and forth and back and forth. And typically, all of this is done by a writer or an editor who isn't even hired to do this stuff. They're hired to write amazing content to grow your readership. And instead, they're stuck doing this stuff, which, as you can imagine, leads to a lot of frustration. Maybe you're one of them. This is where Newsletter Glue can change your game. Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar, Turn Hours into Minutes, Leverage WordPress for Newsletter Publishing. Before we dive in, let me just introduce myself. I'm Leslie Sim, hello. I'm the co-founder of Newsletter Glue, the product that we're going to be demoing and talking about today. Now, let's talk about what you can expect from this session. This webinar is pre-recorded to ensure a smooth and seamless experience for you. Feel free to ask questions whenever you like. We'll email our responses to you. This webinar is for you if you're a writer, editor, product manager, or founder of a media company, local newsroom, or online publication. If you and your team are writing multiple newsletters every week, I'm sure you have a really good idea of how painful and how long it takes. Our goal is to dramatically reduce that publishing time for you so that you can spend more time writing quality content or conducting experiments to grow your email list and revenue. Finally, I'll show you how it's significantly cheaper to use Newsletter Glue in contrast to continuing to get your writers and editors to work half out of WordPress and half out of your existing email service provider, which they are less familiar with. In addition, we also get some customers who have already in the past tried to build out their own solutions only to realize that, after spending upwards of 5 figures, it's not so easy to build a custom solution as the developers that they've hired are not as familiar with the problem space as we are. We enable you to connect your email service provider to WordPress and then build and send your newsletters directly from the WordPress editor. The same WordPress editor that you use every single day to publish your articles, the one that you're already very familiar with. Publishing newsletters this way also means that you can deeply integrate your newsletters into your wider publishing platform. So this means that you can leverage all of the custom work that has gone into your publishing platform already, whether that's SEO, paywall, subscriptions, or more. You can now apply all of that to your newsletter archives and issues and grow your newsletters significantly that way. But don't just take our word for it. Here are the real experiences of users who have reaped the benefits of using Newsletter Glue. Kirsten is a real estate broker, and she's cut her newsletter creation time in half and doubled her click-through rates and open rates by using Newsletter Glue. Incidentally, her stats are now twice as good as the industry average. Mushfiq runs the website Flip, and after using us, he saw a 10x increase in his web audience and doubled conversion rates to his membership site. We've also helped him save significant time and money now that his whole team doesn't have to learn 2 platforms and instead can simply work out of WordPress. Megan from WBUR has cut her team's production time in half. Their newsroom now has a faster, more flexible newsletter system, which not only enables them to capture big news moments, but it's also allowed them to scale to multiple newsletter offerings. And now, let me give you a demo of Newsletter Glue so that you can see exactly how we can help you halve your publishing time. Here we are in a fresh WordPress install. We're in the Newsletter Glue settings, which you can access by going to Newsletters and Settings. We've already connected to MailChimp, but you can also do this connection via our onboarding wizard when you set up for the first time. If we expand the integration, you'll see that we're integrated to MailChimp via our API key. So you can also see that we've got some email default set up. You can see our audience and segments, which are set up in MailChimp, which we pull into Newsletter Glue for you to access, as well as the from name and from email. All of this are set up to autofill every time you create a new newsletter, which saves you some steps so that you don't have to fill it out from scratch every single time you create a new newsletter. Next, we've got newsletter blocks. This is just a series of all the blocks that we have enabled. Next, we've got additional tab. So here is where you can relaunch the onboarding wizard and select from a bunch of other additional advanced features. If you have a newsletter publishing team, it might be useful for you to select the user role and determine how much access you want to grant them. Finally, we've got the Pro License tab. Here's where you enter your license key to ensure you've got access to all of our features. On the top right-hand corner, you've got access to support as well as our documentation. Moving up from settings, we've got templates and styles. Here we've got 3 tabs: templates, patterns, and global styles. Let's go to global styles first. Global styles is kind of the foundation of your newsletter design. Over here, you can select from some quick styles that we've created for you. You can also have further customization by changing the background, content area, as well as the headings, paragraphs, links, and buttons. You can also add custom CSS over here to further customize and design your newsletter. Finally, we've got mobile options for you, which allows you to further customize the mobile design of your newsletter. The template section is where all your newsletter templates sit. For this demo, we're going to create the following newsletter. Here's how it looks. To begin, we're going to add a new template. We're going to call this template Newsletter World V2. Just to make sure you're not lost, right now we are in the template editor, and you can always tell where we are based on the name that you see here. So for our newsletter, we want to add a masthead. So I'm just going to go ahead and add an image, head to our media library, and click on Newsletter World, our masthead. And let's just give it some alt text as well. Next, we're going to add an introduction to our newsletter, followed by an author byline. So this is one of our custom newsletter blocks, which allows you to quickly and easily create a nice looking author byline without having to code this from scratch. In my case, I know that I want to create several sections, so I'm just going to go over here to the list view and select the separator and the paragraph and duplicate them. I'm also just going to open the newsletter preview over here so that we can refer to it as we go. So the next thing we want to do is create a top read section. So we'll just create a heading. And then we're going to use our latest posts block to add our top reads. So the moment we add the block, it auto-populates a number of different posts. And we have a bunch of different filters and options that allows you to customize what shows up. As an example, we can display the latest post from the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 60 days. We can also select the number of posts to display. Once you've made your selection, so in our case, let's select 3 posts to display instead of 4, you want to click Update Block. And then you'll see that the 4th post has disappeared. We've also got some advanced filter options, which allows you to include or exclude certain filters. This can be done by post types, categories, tags, authors, or if you have a custom taxonomy, you can add that in too. Next, we've got a bunch of display options. So for example, in our case, we've only have uncategorized as a category, which doesn't look too nice. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this off. And maybe instead of read more, I want to just say read. Cool, I'm happy with how that looks. So let's keep it this way for now and move on. The next thing we want to add is this subscribe block. So let's get started on that. So to do that, I'm going to add a columns block. So it's important to use our columns block instead of the default block, just so that it's email compatible. That's a 50-50 block, and I'm going to give it a color. And then we're going to add a button block over here. Let's move that to the right to make it look a little nicer. So obviously, if this was a real site, we'd also add a link over here, which you can do just by clicking here and adding your link. The next thing we want to do is add an around the web section. So let's add a heading. And in this case, we're going to use our post embeds block. So the difference between our post embeds block and our latest post block is the latest post block only takes posts from our site itself. If you want to have external links or even a combination of external and internal links, then you'll want to use the post embeds block. So as an example, you can search for a post that's internal to your site, or you can paste links directly into this field. Here's a link from one of our partners, Lena, which is a local news association in Australia. And Lion Publishers, which is another one of our customers from the US. So similar to the latest post block, there are a whole bunch of design options when it comes to the post embeds block. So in our case, let's make it 50-50, kind of like how that looks. So let's keep it as that. And you can also see that we automatically pull the URL, which is really handy when you're posting external links so that people know where they're going to when they click on the link. It's also worth noting that all of the text as well as the images are changeable. So if you want to edit the excerpt as an example to add your own commentary, you can totally do that. The final thing we want to do is add a before you go section. So let's go ahead and do that. So we've got merge tags for you to add an unsubscribe link. So as an example, you can click on the text that you want to turn into a link, head to our merge tags option over here, go to footer, and you'll see unsubscribe link. And this creates an unsubscribe link which you can use, and that allows subscribers to easily unsubscribe. Likewise, we've got an option for you to share the links to your actual newsletter issue. So in this case, if you want to share the link to the newsletter issue on your site, you can just go ahead and click that. We'll update the text. And you can see the merge tag over here. All right, and we're done. So let's go ahead and clean this up and delete the unnecessary blocks. Now we want to save draft and preview the email in browser. Awesome. So this is how our email looks. Really happy with that. This is how it looks on mobile. By the way, while we're here, it's worth mentioning this is what our email preview looks like. So you've got an option to copy this link. And this is a public link which you can share with your team even if they're not logged in. You can also use this link to easily test your emails in Litmus or Emails on Acid. Likewise, you can also copy the HTML of the entire newsletter. Finally, we've got a quick email size checker over here, which lets you quickly see if your email is likely to get clipped by Gmail. Now that we're happy with how our template looks, we also have the option to send a test email to ourselves or publish the template. Awesome, so we've just published the template, Newsletter World V2. Now let's see how we can actually use the template. So if you have a writer or an editor who's in charge of building the newsletters, instead of heading to your email service provider like MailChimp or ActiveCampaign, they'll head to your WordPress site where they are probably already logged in. They'll then go to Newsletters and Emails. Next, they'll select Template and look for the one that they're using, which is Newsletter World. By the way, you can easily remove all of our demo templates as well so as not to clutter your template library and confuse your writers. So let's select Newsletter World V2, which is the template that we're using today. Awesome, so here's our template. Now you can very quickly see an issue with this, and that is that this template is actually a full newsletter issue, which doesn't make sense because it means that your writer has to spend at least 5 minutes deleting a whole bunch of stuff, which we don't want. So let's head back into templates and clean that up a bit. Awesome. We're now back in the template editor and we're going to clean up our Newsletter World V2 template. So we don't need this because our editor is going to be writing the intro every week. So we'll just leave this as blank and they can simply select and start writing. With regards to the latest post block, we'll just leave this as is. How the latest post block works is that every time you create a new campaign, it's going to populate that campaign with the latest post based on the filters that you've set. So once you've already set everything, you don't need to touch this ever again. We're also happy with how this looks, so we're not going to touch this either. We are, however, going to delete these two posts because we don't want to have to force the editor or the writer to delete it every single time. So we've already formatted how we want the post embeds block to look. So now going forwards, all the editor needs to do is paste in the URL and everything will populate and be pre-formatted and look the way you want. I'm also happy with the before you go section, so we can leave that alone too. Now let's just update the template. Now let's head back to the campaign. So we're going to go back to newsletters and emails and select the new template. Great, here's a new template. We can now add our own intro. As I mentioned, these are going to be pre-populated based on the filters you've selected over here. So this looks right to me. I'm going to leave that alone. One cool thing about the latest post block is that I can decide which posts I want to hide. So as an example, if I selected to display the latest post from the past 24 hours and our site creates 10 articles every 24 hours, but I really only want to show the top 5 or 6, I'm then able to then hide the post that I don't want to show. So in this case, only this post will show up in the newsletter itself. Moving down, we have the Around the Web section, and here in the Post Embeds block, I'm able to paste the links that I've curated for this week's newsletter issue. As you can see, all the posts appear pre-formatted the way that we had set things up in the template. Great, this looks good to me. And if I'm happy with how it all looks, I'm going to save the draft. And then I'm going to scroll down to the Send as Newsletter section. Over here, I'm going to change the subject, give ourselves a preview text. And as you can see, our audience segment from name and from email is pre-populated, so we don't have to change that anymore. And you should always send yourself a test email to make sure that the email looks exactly how you intend it to look. So let's go ahead and do that. And when we're done and we're happy with how everything looks, we head to the Send as Newsletter toggle. So what you want to do here to send your newsletter is to toggle on Send as Newsletter and then publish the newsletter as you normally would. Once we hit publish, you'll see that your newsletter is on its way. So right now, the newsletter is being sent via MailChimp to your subscribers. This allows us to leverage MailChimp's excellent deliverability while using WordPress to build and send your newsletters. You'll also be able to check the metrics of your newsletter performance in the MailChimp dashboard itself. As you can see, once the template is set up, the process of creating the newsletter every week or every day is significantly faster than what you would experience if you were creating the same newsletter inside of your email service provider. I now want to show you how you can make things even faster using our automated emails feature. So let's add a new automation. And as always, you can see where you are by taking a look over here. So we are in the automated emails editor. So with the automated emails, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see slightly different options. You've got email frequency as well as automation type. So you have the option to send these emails automatically by selecting Send Automatically. This means that this exact email will be sent out on the schedule that you've chosen over here. So if you've chosen to create and send an automatic email, there are a bunch of things that you obviously have to remove. As an example, you wouldn't be able to have an editorial or intro section, so you might want to remove that. And you just have a top read section, which is auto-populated. You also wouldn't be able to have an around the web section with curated links. So let's say we do want to have all of those sections and we do want to create a custom email every week. The better option in that case is to create campaign drafts. So this means that every week on Monday at 7 p.m., this campaign draft will be created. This saves a step for your editor who will now be able to go into the email section and just edit the campaign draft. So let's leave everything else as is and click on Run Automation and then Publish. So our newsletter automation is now running and you can see the details of the automation. So this means every Monday at 7 p.m., this campaign draft is going to appear in the campaign section. So this is the campaign section. And a new draft is going to appear here every Monday at 7 p.m. The final thing that I wanted to mention is patterns. This can be accessed in Templates and Styles and in the Patterns tab. So patterns are a great feature for parts of your newsletter which you might want to experiment with constantly. So in our case, we have the Newsletter World subscription. Let's just open the email preview. That's this section over here. And let's say that you are constantly wanting to experiment with different ways of creating this section to see what converts the best. Rather than changing your template all the time, you can simply create different patterns for it, which allows you to plug and play different options. So in our case, let's duplicate this newsletter vault subscription and create a different one. So I think for this option, I'm going to change the headline. Awesome. I'm also going to change the call to action over here. And let me just go ahead and invert the colors to make it pop a bit more in the newsletter itself. Great, I'm happy with how this looks. So let's just give it a new title. One important thing that you should pay attention to when creating new patterns is make sure you give it a pattern category, and I'll show you why this is important shortly. In our case, this is a newsletter callout, so this is already checked and I'm happy with that. So let's update. Great, so let's go back to one of our campaigns. So we'll head to emails and campaigns. Here we have a draft newsletter vault v2, so I'm going to go ahead and edit that. So I want to replace this section with the one that we've just created. So I'm going to delete this one. And then I'm going to go to the block inserter over here and to the patterns tab and search for newsletter callouts. And this is why it's really important to create a category for each of your patterns so it's easy to find them later. And we've got our two options over here. So let's click on the one that we want. Awesome. So here's what our new pattern looks like. I hope it stands out a bit more than the old one. I don't know. And that's why it's important to test with your different calls to action and create different patterns for them. So if I'm happy with this, I'm going to go ahead and save the draft and send this as my next newsletter and find out if this converts better than the previous one. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed our tour of Newsletter Glue. I hope you can see how building newsletters this way is significantly faster and will allow your newsletter team to level up. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the demo. Thanks for staying with us. If you have more questions or you have specific requirements that your team needs in order to get started with us, or perhaps you're an agency or an enterprise customer looking for a custom package, feel free to get in touch with us and we can have a chat and see if Newsletter Glue is the right fit for you. To recap, time is money. And if your publishing team is spending hours and hours every week formatting their newsletters and getting frustrated, Newsletter Glue pays for itself by halving your publishing time. Our awesome support team is on standby and is excited to help you get started and onboarded. I can't wait to see you inside.